This is what it looks like from my chair. So what changed? I flipped the ground wire around. Well, why was I unhappy in the first place? Why was I looking for something to change? Why did it make so much sense to change that? At normal condo apartment listening volumes, the bass boomed. The bass was coming out of the speakers and it boomed. And what I had to do, not really one note bass, but kind of like that. And it was probably a room mode. I don't know. I don't know if you can see, I put all these ceiling tiles all around the room. I don't think that the ceiling tiles absorb any sound. But what they do is when I first moved in here, I had a bunch of posters. They're behind me too. And I noticed when I put the posters up, I noticed that that's the train. I'm right across the street from the train tracks, from the train station. But it was obvious that when those posters were up, the sound in this room changed. It didn't echo or reverberate, and it allowed me to concentrate more on the source of the sound than the sound of the room. And then when I painted the room, took all the posters down, posters were in frames. I noticed that I didn't like the way the room sounded, but I didn't want to put the posters back up again. And it occurred to me that what was really changing was the interruption of the wall surface. None of these tiles absorb sound, but what they do is they break up the surface of the wall. And it's a very natural, it's not muffled in here. It doesn't muffle the high frequencies. It just keeps everything from ringing around. And notice that there's none of the corners have any bass traps or any kind of treatment at all. Not one corner oh, wait a minute. This corner does. And that's loaded with 8 inches deep of fiberglass. But it doesn't, believe it or not, the sound of the room didn't really change much when I built that in there. Okay, so that probably sneaks a few of the high frequencies out and controls a little bit of the reverberation in the room. I'm going back before that was built. I noticed what those posters did. Anyway, the room boomed. The little RS325 Infinity speakers, the bass, especially if I walked into the corner of the room, if I walked over here, I could hear the boom out in the room. But when I stuck my head in this corner, the boom was unbelievable. And that was any corner in the apartment, in any room, in the bedroom, in the bathroom, in the kitchen. Every single corner did the same thing. And the only way I could control it, there were 2 ways of controlling it. One was to put socks in the ports. Those little speakers had 2 little ports in them. Or turn the volume down. Or take it off of this direct mode. The other amp had the same thing, source direct. I could take it off of that and then I could use the bass and treble controls. And a quick thing about these bass and treble controls, I was really surprised to find out that they only control one frequency. One frequency. It makes that frequency louder or softer. One frequency. Not all of the treble, one frequency. And it does it with, I'm going to say, probably inferior amps. That the good amp, the amp that has all the money in it, is the amp in this box. And then there's little amps that control one frequency. Well, I think when you use these, it kills the sound. If you go source direct, it takes the signal out of these little inferior amps and leaves the signal in the well-designed, better component part of the amp. So I didn't like using bass and treble controls, bass controls, to control the room boom. I didn't like how the speakers sounded when they had socks in the ports. But I read this book. 44 bucks. Best 44 bucks I ever spent. The Complete Guide to High-End Audio. If the whole book was 2 sentences, 1 sentence, wire has a grain. 2-second sentence, the ground wire controls the signal. The ground wire is more important than the positive wire. 2 sentences, that's all I needed in that whole book. So it wasn't bias. I didn't take my wires apart and flip the ground wire and say, oh yeah, that sounds better. You know why? Because I can't put it back to the way it was, so it better sound better. Nope. Here's what happened. I put everything back together, hooked it all back up again, turned the music on. All the settings were pretty much where I listened to them all the time. And I could not go into any part of this apartment and find room boom. Everything just sounded crystal clear, almost like I was listening to an open baffle speaker.